Do 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 da da. Do 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 da da.
Hey guys, Sophia here. Welcome back to the Curious Curator. Today I'm going to talk about something which is important for pretty much everyone, which is architecture. A lot of people don't really think about architecture. In fact, many people don't even notice it unless it's really flashy or there's something wrong with it. The exhibition that I'm going to talk about is called Porto Poetic. I chose this particular exhibition not only because it's still on view here in Porto, but also because architecture is in the order of the day in Portugal. It has just been announced that for the next Venice Architecture Biennale, Portugal will participate with a newspaper. And the official reason for this is because we're in the middle of a huge economical crisis, so we don't have the budget for big projects, so we're participating with a smaller and more modest proposal. But it turns out that Rem Koolhaas, who is the director of the Biennale, wasn't really convinced, and I think he has a point. The budget is half of what it was 2 years ago, which means it's 150,000 euros. And like the director says, you can do a lot with 150k euros if you have imagination and creativity. He says, and I loosely quote, that even though he believes it will be a great newspaper, it is very sad that Portugal has no real presence in the event, because he believes that Portugal has a lot to say about architecture, and especially in Europe right now. In response, this all happened really quickly, by the way, in less than a day. Samuel Rego, who is the General Director of the Arts here in Portugal, said that a newspaper is a creative idea that has the advantage of being portable and accessible. He also says that when Rem Koolhaas reads the newspaper, he will understand the aim of this initiative. I guess we'll wait and see. On to the exhibition. Porto Poetic is curated by Roberto Cremascoli, who has stated that this exhibition is a sort of personal tribute or discourse about the city of Porto and specifically its architects. It was initially shown in Milan last year at the Museum La Triennale di Milano. The exhibition aims to be both historical, documental and conceptual, which makes for a very full, sometimes confusing, but ultimately really interesting exhibition. If you like architecture, you've probably heard of the Porto School. When it comes to international renown, architecture is perhaps the area in which we are most famous. Two of our most well-known architects are Álvaro Siza and Eduardo Souto de Moura, both past winners of the International Pritzker Architecture Prize, which aims to celebrate the work of living architects who have had consistent and important contributions to the built environment. In this exhibition you can also find the work of Fernando Távora, Carlos Castanheira, some younger architects such as Isabel Furtado and Nuno Brandão Costa, and even get a glimpse of Manuel de Oliveira, the most famous of our city's cinema authors. If you've heard of these reference figures, this is an invaluable glimpse into the architects' minds and into the process of creating these seminal architectural pieces. But even if you're not very knowledgeable about architecture, chances are you will still be able to connect with this exhibition, since it will make you acutely aware of the spaces that surround us and the choices made by the people who design and build those spaces. Architecture is a tricky thing to exhibit because you can never show the architecture itself in an exhibition space. You can only show documentation of it. This exhibition uses a lot of different ways of documenting. Photography, video, drawings, maps, texts and models, which give you different ways of experiencing the architecture. The photographs kind of pull you in. They show you what it's like to experience the architecture from a human point of view. The videos are equally immersive, with the added bonus of showing a temporal side to the experience of the space. The texts show us the way that critics look at the architecture with a conceptual appreciation of the works. The drawings and plans show you the abstract, geometrical side of the space, and the models give you a bird's eye view that you can't normally have in real life, allowing you to take in the architecture all at once, as a single piece, instead of experiencing it in parts and in a limited, earthbound perspective. Hopefully, this will foster the general public's capacity of critically engaging with the built environment and allow them to be involved in the development of their own cities and spaces to live in. The works shown here span several decades, starting in the 1960s. Geographically speaking, there is a strong focus on projects that were developed here in Portugal. However, the work of these architects is known all over the world, and consequently you can see projects that were developed in the UK, South Korea, Brazil and other countries. Let's look at some of the works in detail. Eduardo Souto de Moura was responsible for the rebuilding of the Portuguese Center for Photography, a former prison that was recently adapted to be a museological institution dedicated to the medium of photography. I've worked there as an intern, and if you want to see the space in more detail and how it's being used for exhibitions, check out the first episode in my web series. Then there is the place where I'm working now, the Serralves Museum of Contemporary Art, which was designed by Álvaro Siza. And it's just a beautiful museum, worth checking out for the architecture alone. It's inserted into a natural setting surrounded by huge gardens, and the architect acknowledges this by the use of extensive and numerous windows that look out into the green spaces, letting in the natural light into the museum. Of course, these windows are often covered, depending on the exhibitions, but other times they are used to great effect. Check out my second video to see the exhibition space in more detail. There are all kinds of buildings here: churches, museums, libraries, pools, universities, even tea houses and farms. Another really cool project is this one, for the Municipal football stadium in Braga, again by Eduardo Souto de Moura. This looks impressive enough in model form, but I can tell you that in person it's really beautiful. It seems to rise up from the rocky mountain. The last part of the exhibition is in the upstairs part of the gallery. This section, called Design, seems to be more focused on smaller projects in Portugal, like hotels and farms, made by younger architects. But there's also a museum in here, the Coa Museum, which I really love, and I will tell you why. My family is actually from a little village in the Portuguese countryside near the city of Foscoa, where a few decades ago were found Paleolithic drawings and other priceless artifacts. This museum was built to showcase those artifacts and the history of the region. I was afraid they might do a completely inadequate building for the rocky, mountainous landscape of the region, but they actually built something which is perfectly integrated into the landscape. You can see that from these models and pictures, so I promise you that the next time I go visit my ancestral home, I will do a video about the museum so you can see it properly. Besides architecture, there are also several related design pieces, including chairs, tables, lighting fixtures, and even doorknobs. These for me were not as interesting, because although they were designed for the spaces that are being exhibited, it was a bit difficult for me to imagine how exactly they would look like in situ. Porto Poetic is currently on view at the Municipal Gallery inside the gardens of the Crystal Palace here in Porto. They also have a wonderful website where you can read all the texts that accompany the exhibition and see photos of the making of the exhibition. That's it from me for today. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time with more exhibitions.